I won't be able to make it to SCG Con Las Vegas. And I think I have somewhat of an obsession with deck building and theory crafting because I've recently been doing some thought experiments about what deck I would take if I were going. It's actually led me to some realizations that even I was surprised by. The biggest is that as I've thought about it and looked at the options, I think we're in a really healthy meta right now. I think, and this may be somewhat controversial, I think we're in the healthiest meta we've seen. I know Druid is dominating, and I know Druid is making up half of the top 8, if not more sometimes. But whether that be a point against Druid or not, I think the diversity in Druid options actually encourages a diverse meta. Not only have we seen Water Fire do well, but CJ's list with Shapeshift, Pascal's list with Earth Fire, Julian's Mono Fire, the Mono Water list, and my Air Fire list that I just won Houston with. All are options that breed diversity in the meta, even if we're seeing an abundance of Druids. Also, I think there are decks that perform really well into Druid. We saw Death Speaker do exceptionally well in Houston, an Elementalist make the top 8. We've seen Avatar of Earth, Avatar of Air, Sorcerer, Pathfinder, a lot of varied builds within those avatars as well. And I can't think of a time prior to this that we had such variety in deck options. That being said, there were a lot of influences of kind of what led into the deck that I chose. Now, I could do a whole series on the decks I think are viable right now, but in this video, I wanted to specifically focus on the deck that I would be taking to Las Vegas if I were going. And there's been a lot of influences on that, even specifically recent games, as recent as Houston. And I always try to look at these games with a lens of learning. Not only how my deck performed, but how did my opponent's deck perform? What were they able to do that surprised me? What were they able to do that maybe my deck wasn't equipped to handle as well as I thought? Or maybe they performed against other decks better than I would have anticipated. This leads me to my finals game with James at SCG Con Houston. And I'd like to, before getting into that, give a little context as to playing against James and his Avatar of Air list, specifically his Mono Air Avatar of Air list. His list is very low to the ground. It's very aggressive, a lot of 2 and 3 power minions. And I first encountered that list, him on it specifically, at the first Texas-based Cornerstone event at Reaper Games. We were both in the 4th round, and we hadn't cut to top 8 yet. But when we sat across the table from each other and he flipped Avatar of Air, I was pretty confident in that matchup. I was on Hot Springs at the time. I had encountered some Earth Air lists that I felt Hot Springs had a fair chance into. But as the game progressed, the Mono Air list's ability to suffocate your opponent really showed. I couldn't get my footing against his 2 and 3 power airborne minions. Even with a fast start of my own, with an early Ludbogcat, a Rolling Boulder got 2-for-1 value and damage on me, and the game quickly went in his favor. I left that game with a lot of curiosity as to the potency of Avatar of Air, specifically the Mono Air list, because its ability, like I said, to suffocate your opponent, not give them any chance to breathe. Fast forward to Houston, we're working our way through the Swiss rounds, and yet again, James is my opponent on his Avatar of Air list again. This time, fortunately, I'm on a list that, after doing some building, I feel is a little better into the Mono Air list. It has more airborne units. It has better ways to get 2-for-1 value with my airborne units. I'm able to squeak that game with a Courtesan Thighs, forcing him to attack my avatar, and then flying himself into the corner where he can't move anymore. And I win that game, but it feels more lucky. And as James and I talk, I joke with him about how he was able to make a Haast Eagle feel like an Infernal Legion. With the amount of effort I had to put in to deal with it, I felt gassed the whole time. As we cut to top 8, I noticed James makes top 8. There's a Death Speaker, an Avatar of Air, an Avatar of Earth, an Elementalist, and 4 Druids. All 4 Druids are on the same side of the bracket, which means the finals will be Druid versus something else. And we were all pretty excited about that because we wanted to see not a Druid mirror, but there was some concern about the decks that were in the top 8 on the other side, as they were really efficient against Druid lists. As me and James sit down on our final match, I just really have like one question. How oppressive are these 2 and 3 power minions going to be? How fast is this deck going to be? Am I going to get a chance to get footing? Because I'm the higher seed, I get to choose if I am on the play or on the draw. And all weekend, I'd really been enjoying being on the draw. I felt my deck could stabilize, and the extra card provided to aggro, I thought, actually gave them more of a boon than letting them go a turn earlier. I don't know if that was the right decision against James, but fortunately, the mulligan and information I got from the card on top, seeing it was a Ring of Morrigan, allowed me to play a slower game, managing my life total, and eventually play my Infernal Legion. James's deck does have ways to answer Ring of Morrigan into Disenchants. And it does have ways to deal with large minions with Bottomless Pit and Chaos Twister. And had he seen any of those, the game could have been way different. But after I play my second Infernal Legion, and he's on Death's Door, the game feels pretty close at that point. So I left the weekend really impressed by the potential of Avatar of Air, but also really intrigued by if there was a way to plug the holes against its vulnerabilities. I know CJ has mentioned that Drums of Doom is a auto win against mono air. Unless they're on air, Ring of Morrigan particularly gives them a huge problem. And Druid's Flipped Aura. I also know that they struggle into the mid game. A minion ubiquitous as Panorama Manticore, being 5 power and airborne, can just pose a huge problem for Avatar of Air. So it's with this knowledge that I set out to build and theorycraft what I would take, as I do think Avatar of Air is one of the best decks in the meta. I mean, obviously it made it into top cut and the finals in Houston, but we've seen it top 8 at several other tournaments, including 2 at Gen Con. So I really wanted to look into the potential of Avatar of Air and see if we could tackle the meta in an interesting way, I guess. And that led me to Cinderwave. Cinderwave is a Avatar of Air with the inclusion of fire. I think the best thing to do right now is basically do a little primer time to dive into the deck, and it looks pretty standard compared to a normal Avatar of Air list. With the inclusion of fire, we get to fill some of the holes that I think the mono air suffers from. As our only aura, we're running Black Plague as a hard removal option. I know I've talked about this card in previous primers, but it is one of the best hard removal cards Air has access to. Its ability to hit the subsurface, for Avatar of Air to throw things into it. A repeatable hard removal spell is not something to sleep on, and the card always outperforms. Next, we've got our artifacts. Pretty straightforward, with the exclusion of 1, which I'll touch on at the end. Ring of Morrigan, 3 Torhammer trinkets, and Rolling Boulders. Rolling Boulder, paired with Avatar of Air's mobility, basically is 12 damage every time you play Rolling Boulder. It's really easy to set up 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s, lining up a position where you have 2 or 3 units in the path of the boulder as you throw it. It's also really easy for you to go and fetch and repeat the ability. Our minion package looks pretty much like a standard Avatar of Air list, with the exclusion of 3 additions. We've got Highland Falconers, we've got Bats, Highland Princess, Headless Hunt, Phase Assassin, Host Eagle, Plume Pegasus, Gyre Hippogriffs, and a Witherwing hero. 2 Sacred Scarabs to deal with early pressure, like pawned into Ludbog Cat or Unicorns. 3 Clamor of Harpies. These cards have been an MVP in the Druid meta. Their ability to hunt down Tawny, not only on Genesis, but their fact that they're airborne allows you to continue to make sure that their Tawny has a hard time sticking around. Finally, Sir Lamrak. Sir Lamrak has always been one of my favorite knights. And in Avatar of Air, you really get to abuse this card. You can play him on your site and whisk him immediately into your opponent's location to make it hard for them to remove him comfortably. Or you can use him as a 4-mana AoE, deal 4 damage to everything, playing him directly into your own bottomless pit to have him die on entry and triggering his death right. Or with the abundance of water and everybody's running Troll Bridge now, playing him and throwing him into a Troll Bridge, electing not to discard a card, and having the site strike him, killing him, and blowing everything up immediately. I've done all of that several times, and it always feels really, really impressive. Our magics are pretty standard, but I'm trying to fill the holes with my Fire Edition. We are running 2 disenchants. I would consider going to a 3rd if the deck had more draw, but the amount of artifacts and auras that really hurt this deck are high, so this is a non-negotiable. I am running 3 tactical moves. Tactical moves, it enables insane plays with Rolling Boulder. Tactical move solves so many problems for cards like Headless Hunt. Headless Hunt loves to roll into the corner for me, and 2 free steps that don't require it to tap often are the difference between a Headless Hunt getting any damage in or a Headless Hunt getting no damage in. It also enables insane Rolling Boulder plays, where you can roll the boulder, play a tactical move, go into the position of where the boulder is. Your unit is untapped because of the tactical move, so you get to tap and roll the boulder again. Tactical move has been a standout card for me, even more so much so that I actually took out all of my blinks for it. We've got 2 Chaos Twisters, which fundamentally I have never run this card, as I don't necessarily love the dexterity check, but it's almost not an option to take it out of the deck. You can get immense value if you land their Panorama Manticore on them. 2 for wanting them, dealing a quarter of their health. Next we have Infiltrate. To no surprise, many of these cards are staple in their element. Infiltrate is a little bit of a gambit with the amount of counterplay to it, but as my friend Chris, who's a Battle Mage main, has shown us early on, if Infiltrate just taps a blocker for the turn in an aggro list, that can be the difference between winning and losing that game, allowing you to push the damage when necessary. At worst, it taps a blocker, but at best you get to remove the card from the game indefinitely if they never get it back, or choose to pivot and use it to push extra damage. You can also combo it with the Black Plague, infiltrating a unit, playing the Black Plague, attacking the unit into the Black Plague, and at the end of the turn, the Black Plague would kill it. Shatter Strike is in the list to solve some of the artifact problems. It doesn't solve all of them, as Drums of Doom is typically not held, and as Drums of Doom and all of the monuments typically aren't held. However, this card acts as a pseudo charge minion if you have any 3-power minion in play, with upside. Finally, Poison Nova was a bit of a eureka moment for me in this list. As I included it and started to play with it, it really felt like I was playing Druid again. And to give some insight, I mean, in my opinion, Druid's biggest strength is Tawny, and the airborne spellcasting unit flying around into a perfect position to cast these positional spells is what Druid leverages the most. Avatar of Air gets to do that too, by tapping, playing your 5th site, whisking into a perfect position. Airborne units are typically out of the way, casting a perfect Poison Nova, typically getting 2 or 3 large minions for the value. The card is outperformed in this deck, and again, I know it's a staple card. I know this card is very well known, but you would typically not see it in a really low to the ground aggro list like this, but it has really performed. The last card I want to mention in the spellbook is back in the artifacts, and that's Pendragon's Banner. Pendragon Banner took place of Devil's Egg for me when I wanted to kind of see what I could do to make the deck maybe a little faster, but also make my units a little more survivable against a mid-range deck. I noticed this card really was easy to keep active. The extra damage was huge whenever we're having 2 or 3 minions in play at a time. But most importantly, the extra survivability proved paramount. The plumed Pegasus going to 4 power instead of 3 made it way harder to deal with our current card pool. The same as Jihad, curving out fire minions just above what the average removal numbers are. Pendragon's Banner has been probably my favorite card in the list. In their sights, pretty standard. It has a lot of air sights, as the game plan is to stay with that low to the ground, fast mono air strategy. But we've got Curse Land and Poison Well added as incidental damage. If we can push a couple extra damage with a Curse Land or a Poison Well, that fits perfectly into our agenda. We're trying to close this game fast. Curse Land particularly is a little unique. I generally don't think this card is very good. But in Avatar of Air, we're typically playing so few sites that we can really force the opponent to play a site or two into it, and us never have to get an additional mana, as we're curving out at 5 for a Poison Nova if we have to. I've actually been really impressed with Cursed Land, but there could be other inclusions if I were to go to Vegas, like River of Blood, for instance. Outside of that, we've got our standard sinkholes. Towers, beacons, and one of my favorite cards, Updraft Ridge. I know I talked about this in Smoke and Ash, but that plus movement makes units extremely survivable, squirrely, and the attack vectors multiply pretty heavily with that card. That's the list, and I'm really excited to hear y'all's feedback. And I've got a few games that I want to do some commentary on, and I'll post it shortly. Like I said, let me know what y'all think. If this is a list that y'all would take, feel free. That would be so cool to see somebody perform with this. I'm not saying it's like the perfect meta call. I just think that as I've tested with it, I've been severely impressed with how it has performed. All that to say, this isn't you should definitely play this, because there's so many options to choose from right now. And I don't think you really are going wrong with any of them, as long as you take the meta into account. Meaning, as long as you have a comfortable game plan into Druids, I think you'll be okay. With that conclusion, let me know if you have any questions, or I'll be posting some game commentary shortly. And I think a few of these games really show off the potential of this deck. But thank you for spending some time with me as I chat through Cinderwave. I look forward to seeing what takes place in Vegas, even though I can't go. I think the meta is going to be really exciting to see the diversity there with the inclusion of the dust sites and everything like that. So y'all take care.